Chet Bennetts asked over 3,700 people about their retirement knowledge. He gives us the number one factor that goes into your retirement readiness.
So the retirement income literacy survey is something that has been going on since 2017 was or 2014, I apologize, was one of the first waves that we did. And really it was with this idea that in personal finance, we have some of these scales of financial knowledge or financial literacy as it pertains to, do people understand compound interest? Do people understand things like inflation? And so those questions have been around for a while. So at the American College of Financial Services, because we have a retirement income center, we wanted to ask the questions of, well, what are some key things that consumers maybe know and don't know or should know as it pertains to their retirement income planning, and those key moments and key elements of knowledge that we would hope consumers have as they're approaching and as they are in retirement.
Yeah, we're going to go through some of those kind of things that are good news for Americans, maybe areas that we get to improve upon. And I like the idea of this retirement income literacy. The idea is a bit of what do you know about retirement? How can you get improved on what you know with retirement? And I love that you're doing the research on that. One of our taglines is that you need to learn more about your money so that you feel better about your money and you make better money decisions. I think this is where you're trying to pick this up of what do Americans already know? What do they need to learn more about your money? I think you might agree with that tagline, that if you learn more about your money, you'll feel better about that and make the better money decisions.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was one of the areas that I really focused on, because a lot of my research is surrounding really the psychosocial or the behavioral side of what is our relationship with money? What are the things that cause us stress and anxiety about money? And then as a profession, what are things that we can do either at the client facing side, obviously, to reassure clients and educate clients, but then within the academic spectrum, being able to arm advisors and consumers with information that will help them feel better about it.
Yeah, and you went through a whole lot of different knowledge areas of, okay, here's the things that you ought to know about your retirement income. And the top knowledge area, the place where everyone you asked questions about knew the most, was both inflation and housing. And I kind of like that. Good for us Americans, good for the people taking the survey. You got so much control over your spending decisions. You have so much control over your housing decisions. You got more control of that than your financial advisor would. And so I guess that's a positive coming into it, that we seem to be kind of adjusting and making good financial decisions when it comes to inflation and housing.
Yeah, what's interesting about that, and we're going to be releasing some additional findings in some journals over the next couple of months and at other conferences, but that wasn't always the case. In previous waves, because again, this is the fourth iteration of this. Every 3 years, we survey consumers age 50 to 75, and we ask these questions. And what was interesting is that the inflation and housing did pop on this, but in broader, not in our study, but in broader financial literacy, inflation question, which oftentimes was not one of the ones that people got right, all of a sudden people are getting it right. And I think that really goes down to the knowledge is being obtained through experience. And if you think about when we administered this survey in 2022, and we're finding the results of it in 2023 and in 2024. What was the top of mind? What was every headline? It was inflation. It was housing. So those things as being elements of A, being knowledge. They're learning more about it because they have to, right? Consumers in general and clients. But B, then the actual experience of, oh crud, I better understand this. Like, what does this mean for the future for me? I think those two things combined are really where we're seeing some lift in that. It'll be interesting as we do future iterations, depending on what the hot topic is. Hopefully that knowledge is retained and we just continue to build on the other elements, the other subcategories of the literacy survey, so that that's not a short-term memory thing.
Yeah, it shows a bit of how resilient we are. That
Absolutely.
when inflation and housing costs became the biggest issue for retirees, especially, we were able to adjust
Yeah.
and do what we needed to do. Although, like I said, it's a bit of the experience. As we experience things throughout time, we learn from it, grow from it, and that was another positive I saw within the study is that you break things down demographically. And I was, the way I say it looking at your study was, the older you are and the more retired you are, uh, the more you know. And that was my quick conclusion is that, hey, we learn from experience. And a lot of times you read the conclusion of a retirement study like this, or at least what you put in the news is no one's ready for retirement, everything's horrible. Um, I think that's somewhat wrong. Hey, you're 55 and you're not ready for retirement. You're not retiring yet. By the time you're
Right.
65 and you're retiring, you'll get ready, or you'll get ready real quick, just from learning how it. You'll learn how to be retired by being retired.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And if, regardless of your degree of readiness or how um, adequate your retirement was, you're going to figure it out. You will figure it out. You're
Mm-hmm.
either going to wait longer, you're going to spend less, whatever the case may be, you're going to be resilient. You're going to figure it out. You're not just going to be like, well, I'm out of money. Now what? The research says that I would have been out of money at this point in my life, so the formula all was correct. Yay. No, we figure it out. We're going to find different ways. Not that is the ideal situation for everyone, is just like live until you run out of money, even if it's sooner than you want it to be. But yes, the older the respondent, as well as the higher the net worth, there's a lot of things that contributed to higher elements of the financial literacy score for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just think this resiliency hitting retirement, just it really struck home to me about 10 years ago. I had a client that was maybe just over 55. They were
Mm.
kind of done with working. They wanted to retire and said, how soon can I retire? And we did a bunch of projections of what if you go now? What if you go at 60, 62, 65, right? Just what are your options? And of course, the longer they work, the more income they'd ought to have for the rest of their life. Um, and I showed them, here's exactly how much you could live on at retiring just today. They're making like 200 grand roughly, and that number was more like 60. Like, yeah, you can quit today, but you got to cut your
Right.
income down to 60. And they said, okay, let's do it. I thought, there's no way, it's not possible. How can you possibly do that and see your income drop 70% and be completely fine with it? And they retired. They both took some part-time jobs, so that helped boost up their income a little bit. So maybe they're clocking around like 90 or so right now, I'd say. But
Yeah.
it's been almost 10 years, and they're loving life. They're enjoying it. And I just had no thought 10 years ago, yeah, cut your income in half and have fun. No,
Right. Right.
that's
Right.
but that's what they did. They cut their income in half, and they were resilient. They did what they needed to do to get their income to kind of that level, and they're going on vacations. They're going out to eat. They're having fun.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and as advisors, I think oftentimes we do get stuck in the trap of, wanting to maximize portfolios and maximize outcomes, whether regardless of what methodology you use, if you're using a Monte Carlo or whatever tool you're using, to make sure, oh my gosh, we got to get to this point. But that client's a great example that sometimes the perception of what we as advisors have for our clients of the perfect retirement, mathematically, objectively, whatever, for them, the freedom by which they wait, I can have that amount and I don't have to work anymore. Done. Let's go. Right. Like that component of it, I think as advisors, oftentimes we sometimes miss because we're so caught up in wanting to make sure that we do maximize and we do have the most efficient things and all of those components that, yeah, that's refreshing to hear that there's stories like that.
Yeah, you got it. Although it's not everything's rosy,
For
especially in
sure.
your study. Asking lots of people here, you kind of rank the order of knowledge of how much do you know about different retirement topics, and everything on the bottom was in terms of, okay, we just don't know too much about these things. Were annuities, investments, long-term care, life expectancy, how to generate retirement income, taxes. These all seem like, oh my goodness, these are the huge things that really go into having a successful retirement. Although I look at this, those exact topics, and I started thinking, Well, these are all the areas a good financial advisor can help you in.
Yes.
And that's all the areas that a good financial advisor should be adding value to you on. So tell me a little bit about these areas and what we can do to learn more, and maybe how a good financial advisor can help you in those areas.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. The scores as you laid them out, um, some of them as advisors they are concerning, right? It is something where we're saying, oh my goodness, this is kind of scary. However, when we overlay, because that was one question that we had on the survey, was, all right, do you have a relationship with a financial advisor? And it was really interesting that when we put that over the top of it, a lot of those things all of a sudden kind of neutralized. In fact, scores where again, people with more assets or older in life, people with 1 million or more of assets, their scores, all of a sudden, when you put in a financial advisor, someone with less than 100,000 assets had the same knowledge as someone with $1 million of assets because of the financial advisor. So there was this neutralization of gaps in knowledge that we found across all of those domains, quite frankly, where the financial advisor did play a big role in what the score ended up being for the individuals. Uh, Probably one of the bigger ones, because we did get into some of the questions. There was these questions that we had that were less about knowledge and more about concern. And so level of concern in retirement. How concerned are you about da 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 in retirement? And there was a series of questions. There was a total of 10 of them. Each of them had like scores of 1 to 7. And in our largest sample, like the whole sample, not bifurcating it by who had an advisor or not, inflation and cuts to Social Security were two of the biggest ones. Like those had the highest average levels of concern across the whole sample at 5.4 respectively, and out of 7. Okay, and from a financial advisor standpoint, again, it's kind of like, well, I can't help you with either of those things. Like I can't help you directly with either. If I had a magic wand and could go bibbity bobbity boo, sure, but I can help with the perception of the severity of what those things mean to you, right? Like that's where we can flip it back around. So, though we did see decreases of those when there was a financial advisor versus when there wasn't a financial advisor. Um, Probably the biggest retirement concern that had the biggest delta between the two was paying off debts. People with the full sample was 3.6, again, out of 7. People without a financial advisor, it was 4. People with a financial advisor, it was 2.9. Now, maybe it's because people that have a financial advisor don't have as many debts, so they're not as worried about it. That could be one of the things contributing to that score. But it definitely, across all of those retirement concerns, it was amazing to see really that role that the advisor plays in mitigating some of those concerns while at the same time increasing the knowledge. So is it the knowledge that's decreasing the concerns, or is it the advisor that's doing both, right? So that was just another finding that we're beginning to report out a little bit more, and even have created a scale on how confident consumers are in their advisors. So
Yeah, it's interesting. Speaking of kind of differences of financial advisor versus not financial advisor, you broke it down demographically, like any good study will do, and you saw a 5 point gap on male versus female, where the males were coming in at a higher rating of this literacy towards retirement. A 7 point gap of if you're black and Hispanic, black or Hispanic, versus white or Asian. There was a 7 point gap there too, which is unfortunate. We hate to see any gap, especially based on, or not based on, but showing up in a demographic situation that perhaps just society, legacy history is bringing that gap, most likely. So that's unfortunate, and also it gives us an idea when you see there was an 11 point boost in the confidence in the literacy towards retirement of working with a financial advisor. So there's this boost that can occur from education level. There's this boost that can occur with having a financial advisor. There is hope here for everyone, no matter how history and society has contributed towards this gap. There's a gap that can be overcome through education, through a financial advisor, perhaps, or even just like targeted education initiatives. I'm going to put in the show notes two education initiatives I thought were worth looking at. One of them, and they're both through companies I've had connections to over time. One is through a place called Thrivent. They've got this thing called Money Canvas, where they will give you 3 free budgeting sessions. And so I'll have a link to there, the Thrivent Money Canvas. But also, too, maybe even more famous over time is the Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University of here's targeted specific education initiatives that those education initiatives I think can help take care of a lot of this different gaps of however that gap
Yeah,
showed up.
I think any of those for sure are good resources. At the end of the day, most of what we're seeing, it points back a lot to that advisor though. And I think that those kind of content areas are where people digest their information through podcasts, through other things on YouTube or wherever they're getting it are great. But um, as financial planning is personal to the person. It's the personal financial plan. And so those are all great like benchmarks for sure that increase when we ask them, if we happen to ask them these questions in 2 years from now, they're probably going to get them right if they've gone through some sort of, knowledge camp or the things that you mentioned. But when it comes to making decisions or not making wrong decisions, that's where the financial planner, the financial advisor is so critical. And to the extent you want to dive deeper on that within like the data, I mean, we found it all the way from making those who sold assets during volatility in 2022 versus those who didn't. If they had a financial advisor, they were if they didn't have a financial advisor, they were twice as likely to have sold assets during volatility in 2022 than those who did have a financial advisor. So there's some of those things at the end of the day, even those and that was controlling for knowledge. So even the smartest of the smart people who didn't have a financial advisor were still making poor decisions during times of volatility than those who had an advisor. So there's a lot of things that I think as a researcher, but then also as a practitioner, man, there's so much work we still need to do with a lot of this.
Yeah, and we've gone through here, talked about kind of the places where we're doing well at, which is adjusting and learning from the inflation in housing increase in costs the last few years. Some things that we could all learn from, perhaps from a financial advisor, which just reminds me that if you're looking for a financial advisor, find one that educates you. I was just talking with a estate planning attorney just a few days ago, and he was telling me that in his opinion, a lot of estate planning attorneys are selling complexity. They make it sound like this is so incredibly complex. You have to call me the fancy estate planning attorney that has like an office in the high rise in downtown Chicago with pinstripe suits, that kind of thing. Like
Right.
you can only trust me. I think, and what he was telling me is, it's not that complex. What you should be selling is the education and getting things done. And I think that's a good tip, whether you're looking for a estate planner or financial advisor, whomever. If they're educating you, helping you become more empowered, that's a good place to go.
Absolutely.
Speaking of education, part of it, we've gone through a few of these things, but tell me, what else should we find as a highlight that with this retirement study?
Yeah, and this will some of this again will be coming out here shortly. I don't know that it's in the
Breaking
findings.
news. We got extra special
There
insights.
you go. You're getting it first. But we really, when it comes down to some of the psychometric variables that we had in the data set, meaning when we ask people about their stress and when we ask people about their anxiety, then we can look at how all of these things that we've talked about may be contributing to increased levels of stress or increased levels of anxiety. And a lot of the findings that we're seeing on this are not anything groundbreaking. That as compared to males, females have increased odds of reporting higher levels of financial anxiety. Let me specify financial anxiety and financial stress, okay, not just generalized anxiety and
Hmm.
stress. When we see people as compared to those that are age 50 to 54, anyone that's age 60 or over actually had decreased odds of having higher levels of financial anxiety. So as you get older, and you're entering those retirement phases, interestingly enough, in this sample, we actually saw some of that financial anxiety go down. And I think as we've looked at some of these results and just kind of ruminate on them, like, why might that be? Because wouldn't you actually be more anxious, other than the fact that, think about anything else in your life, like the closer to the event or once you're in the event, it becomes less anxious because now you know what to expect. You're worrying about what to expect up to that point. But once you're in it, all of a sudden it's like, oh, like your clients, oh, we can do this. All right,
Mm-hmm.
anxiety gone, right? In fact, theirs was so much gone that they could afford to have an income cut of 70%. Um, when it came to race, there was a lot of things that really weren't statistically significant, meaning when we compare across all of the different races, for the most part, they were very, very similar in it. Um, the income, obviously, that was a big factor as well. So people with lower incomes, they have higher amounts of financial anxiety, regardless of all of the other elements of it. So there's just a lot of interesting things that I think that we saw in there. And again, I don't want to hammer it too hard, but at the same time, I think it is important, not just for your listeners and viewers, but really just as a profession, but then also the consumers that we work with, is that every single one of those, an advisor moderated it and actually had anxiety or stress go down. So poor decisions, not as prevalent. Financial anxiety, financial stress, not as prevalent. And again, we're kind of trying to wrap our head around it. Is it the case that the people that can afford a financial advisor don't have as many, regardless of color and education and age and everything else? Maybe it's that. Like, what are the things? So we're still working through a lot of that. But those are some of the key points. And then the only other thing I would say, if we have time, is the results of the literacy itself. And we kind of struggle even with calling it a literacy survey, because the counter of literacy is illiteracy, and I think
Mm-hmm.
that has a negative connotation. And so it's less about being literate or illiterate as much as it is about applying knowledge about finances. And that hit really, really hard, hit home really hard when a research colleague of mine, Eric Ludwig, who is the director of the center for the Retirement Income Center and facilitator of the RICP designation, Retirement Income Certified Planner, here at the American College, and the survey. He and I have been doing a lot of speaking and research and presentations on AI, specifically generative AI. And so when these results started coming out in the latter part of last year, and we were prepping for press conferences and everything at the beginning part of this year, we were also working on an AI project. I'm like, let's just give AI, let's give ChatGPT these literacy scores. I mean, it's passed the bar, it's passed medical exams, it's passed AP Cal, like it's passed all of these objective exams. Let's see what it does. So I'll ask you, Jeremy. So our average on financial literacy on this survey, you saw all the statistics of it and what the scores were, and the average of it ultimately being what, like 37, depending on the demographic and everything else. What do you think AI, ChatGPT, all-knowing being, what do you think it got on the same quiz?
Guess it got cut in half. I'm gonna go with 20%.
Oh, interesting. Okay, you went the opposite direction. Like most of
All
the
right.
biggest people are like, "Oh my gosh, yeah, probably 80, 90%." And that's kind of what we are expecting, is that there's this objective level of knowledge that has to do with retirement, that this objective all-knowing thing would have done very well. And by the way, like, we're very, very good at prompt engineering, so we prompted it in such a way where it just gave an answer. It wasn't trying to justify, it just was like, give us an answer. And then we do it in a new window. Like, we ask each question in a new situation, so that it wasn't like learning off of that and doing it in
Mm-hmm.
incognito and everything else. Anyway, uh, it actually got a 37%.
Ah,
So
all right.
it did just as well as our higher income, higher net worth, higher educated, or those working with an advisor. And it shocked us because we're like, why would it not be the case that it should have gotten 100? And we started like, oh my gosh, maybe our quiz is just bad. I mean, if AI can't even get the questions right,
Mm-hmm.
maybe the questions are wrong, and that's why humans can't get it right. And so we did an experiment where we actually gave it in a closed environment. We trained it on the RICP content, the Retirement Income Certified Planner content. So it's 3 textbooks. We had it in a PDF. We trained it on that, and then we asked it again, and it got a 98. It got one question wrong. And
Mm-hmm.
so it really was the thing that we were left with, that the conclusion that we were left with is that if this thing that knows everything that's out there, everything that's on the internet, or a large sample of the things that are on the internet, if it can't get these questions right, is it that the information that it's using conflates and doesn't make it very easy to answer the questions, even though it should be able
Mm-hmm.
to? And isn't that the same information our consumers have access to? So
Mm-hmm.
if there's this vastness of right answers out there that even AI can't ascertain the best right answer, our consumers, our clients, man, they've got the same problem, right? Like, but as soon as we trained it to be an advisor, essentially, all of a sudden it got all all but one question right, and we actually had to rewrite that question because we realized, oh, that's a bad question. So because it was stuck in time, it was dealing with inflations and discount rates and whatever, and
Mm-hmm.
it was a question that was stuck in time. So the right answer was based off the wrong premise. Anyway, so I think that that's really, really important when we're talking about these types of studies where we're in our study, or any study for that matter, where we are trying to assess knowledge or literacy amongst consumers and clients, that again, that intermediary of a sounding board of objectivity of right knowledge, or the best right knowledge, us advisors, and what we know, is so critically important.
Yeah, and like I said, that applying the knowledge is an important part. I'm guessing you as well might have got a 97% on your retirement knowledge study, maybe even 100% on that. But tell me a bit for you, Chet. How do you envision spending your retirement? You got the knowledge, but what do you think you'll be doing in retirement?
Yeah, yeah. I always define retirement for myself just like I do with clients. And that's, at what moment in my life will I have the option to work full time as opposed to the obligation to work full time? And so that drives the age for me. And I don't know when that's going to be, but I envision it doing. I love volunteering. Before PhD, coached high school football. Like, I love being involved in doing those types of things, and working with youth, whether it's through junior achievement or whatever the case may be. So probably a lot of that. Maybe grandkids at some point in the future, when that comes down the road. Traveling a little bit. So yeah, probably the quintessential answer that most consumers give.
I suppose I like that idea. You want the option to work instead of the obligation to work. That really just sets it up that way you can. It's amazing. It feels like it's easier to go to work when you know you don't have to go to work. Uh,
Yes.
I
Yeah.
think that's what I've discovered.
That absolutely is true.
I think so. I've got one more question for you, Chet. But before that, tell us what's the best way to reach out to you.
Yeah, connect on LinkedIn. I'm the only Chet Bennetts that's out there. So feel free to connect on there. And just like you and I connected on there after a conference or something, I do
Mm-hmm.
respond. It might be a little slow, but I do respond. And yeah, any questions as it pertains to the retirement income literacy study that we've done. Um, I do a lot of advocacy and work with financial well-being interventions in PTSD treatment, specifically in the military and veteran communities. And so, yeah, I'm I've got a vast array of interests for sure.
That's good. We'll put that LinkedIn connection there in the show notes and the description. Of course, if you'd like more ideas on how to avoid big retirement mistakes, go ahead right now and click that subscribe button to the Retirement Revealed podcast on the Mr. Retirement YouTube channel. All right, Chet, we've got our final question. Tell us something about yourself that few people know about. And remember, this podcast is rated clean.
Aha, gotcha. Okay. Something that very few people know about. Okay. So I think a lot of people in life are generally surprised. I served in the Marines 8.5 years in Iraq, Purple Heart, discharged, the whole 9 yards. played football in college, played football, But I think what a lot of people would be surprised at is that I actually went on a football and music scholarship to college.
What's the
The
instrument, or
the
was it
instrument
vocal?
is the one that the good Lord gave me, my voice.
Oh, that's awesome. That's good. Excellent. Now, Marine Corps, that's oorah, right? Let me hear your best
Hoorah, that's
oorah.
correct. Yep, yep,
Yeah,
yep.
yep.
Hoorah, not
Yeah, I would.
hooah. I mean, if you want to hear the Marines' explanation of why the Army says hooah, I can certainly share that.
There you go. Is it clean? I want to hear
It's
that part.
clean. It's
All
clean.
right, let's hear it.
But
Because I went
as
to
we
my dad's
do,
army. I did ROTC, and I was taught hua.
you were taught hooah, and here's the
Oh yeah.
reason why, Jeremy, is because when the Marines get called to war, they say hoorah, which is, as I was always taught, was some sort of alliteration of like to kill, like hoorah. And when the Army gets told, "Hey boys, you're going to war," they're like, "Who us?" And that's how hooah came around.
I like it. Yep, yep. That's a
We
good
kid, we
Marine Corps
kid.
explanation. I believe it. I believe it. That's awesome. Good. Well, thanks for coming on the show. Thanks for your service, Chet, and
You
sharing
bet.
a bit about what you're doing now, and helping out in the past there with the Marine Corps. Excellent.
Absolutely.
And thank you for listening to the Retirement Revealed podcast. We believe if you know more about your money, you will feel better about your money, and you will make better money decisions. Hi, I'm Jeremy Keil, owner of Keil Financial Partners. And if you're interested in seeing how we help our clients get more income, pay less in taxes, and avoid big retirement mistakes, make sure to go to KeilFP.com. That's KeilFP.com.